come on, and the field is at the top of the stretch. Temple had to check out of it. 3/4 went in 1:11.1. And here is Instilled Regard to take over the lead in the stretch. Some like it Hot Brown in second. Then it's Synchrony. Devamani gaining on the outside, but just the 16th to the finish. It is Instilled Regard with the lead. Devamani closing fast. Instilled Regard is the winner.
Welcome back to another edition of the Racing Rundown here on YouTube. I'm Eric DeCosker, and in this episode we'll be discussing the Grade 1 Manhattan. On Saturday, July 4th, goes as race 10, mile and a quarter for 4-year-olds, and up in a field of 8 will contest this race. Usually conducted on Belmont Stakes Day, moved with the coronavirus issue. This was one of the races rescheduled, pushed a month back. History has shown a pretty solid trend in trainers who win this race. Chad Brown, he's won this race 4 of the last 6 years. He's won it 5 times in his career, and he has a very strong hold on this division in general, and he has 3 of your likely favorites in the race. So we'll get right into it. We'll discuss every single horse in the race, go through kind of the pace scenario that's likely before I give my picks. But first, let's look at these horses. The one, Instilled Regard, likely your favorite, the winner of the prep for this race, the Fort Marcia Grade 2 on the opening, one of the opening graded stakes races of this Belmont meet. That was his first graded stakes win. In his last 4 starts, he has 2 overall in his last 4 races. But really the big thing with this horse, he's still looking for that elusive Grade 1 win. He's tried, but he's yet to get there. This could be the stepping stone. That Fort Marcy could be the stepping stone for a score. In this race, a very impressive win, probably one of the better races of his career. That was off 2 straight losses. The rail's not probably ideal, but it's a long race. There's a lot of time for things to shake up. This is probably the best of the Chad Brown runners. He's coming into this race off a very solid work pattern, and Irad Ortiz Jr. is aboard. A lot to like with this horse. The big thing really is he going to be able to replicate that performance? He has not ever strung together back-to-back wins in his career, but all the signs right now, he's 1 for 1 at Belmont off that Fort Marcy win. The mile and a quarter is his perfect distance. Just a question of whether he'll be in the game this coming Saturday. The 2, Rock Emperor, the second of 3 for Chad Brown. This one, he's 0 for 4 since coming to the United States from France, where he was a pretty quality, 3-year-old when he was second in a Group 3 over there behind a talented horse, and then was 6th in their French Derby. But in his 4 races in the U.S., he's hit the board all but once. That Saratoga Derby last summer was the only time he missed the board. Otherwise, 2 thirds and a second. Last time out in the Charles Whittingham at Santa Anita, he missed by just a nose, but he was disqualified from second to third. But he was very close nonetheless. That was he really didn't get himself home when it looked like he, for quite a long time throughout the stretch, seemed like he was going to run on by. Never got the job done. So the finishing quality has not been there for him since he came stateside. But he does like Belmont, and he does like a mile and a quarter. His one try at it, he was 3rd in the Belmont Derby last July. So that was about a year ago, and here he is now looking to win the Grade 1 Manhattan. That would be the first Grade 1 win of his career. Actually, the first group score of his career, oddly enough. But this is a very talented horse, but he's just had a couple things not go right in his last 2 races. This might just be the setup, though, that he needs. John Velasquez does get back in the saddle on this horse. The 3, Cross Border. He will be your controlling speed in this race, as he usually does. He's either first or second, and that's where he will likely be in this race. Coming off a second in an allowance behind Value Proposition, who's one of your likely favorites for the poker on this undercard, on this Belmont card. He strung together back 2 straight seconds. One that was in the Grade 3 McKnight at Gulfstream in January. That was going a mile and a half. That last race, that allowance race, was going a mile. So we know he can really handle any distance. Pedigree-wise, the further the better for this horse, being by English Channel out of an Empire Maker mare. That's, 2 mile and a half, 2 horses there that love the mile and a half. This race a mile and a quarter, but it does seem like a good spot for him. And if you're someone who really adheres to how a race is going to set up, if that's what you base your handicapping on, and this is the horse for you, because he can hang with some good horses. He almost won a graded stakes 2 starts ago. And the distance just looks good for him. And like I said, there's no one that's really going to go with this horse. Jose Ortiz, always a very capable rider, he's going to be able to work out a very nice front running trip. And who knows, he might just be able to steal this one on the front end if he's lucky enough, a very live long shot. The 4 Sadler's Joy, the old veteran. He's a 7-year-old now, trying and trying every time. He's the only one of 2, Grade 1 winners in this field, but he has not won at that top level in quite a few years. He's lost his last 3 races. Very disappointing last time out as the favorite in the Tiller. That was a listed stakes at Belmont when he was a third, and it never really seemed like he was going to win. This horse is definitely no longer at that top Grade 1 level. He had some really good runs last year at Saratoga and at Belmont, but this year he's kind of taken a step back. Hasn't really packed that same punch we'd seen from him before. Regular rider Javier Castellano is back in the saddle for Tom Albertrani. If you believe this horse is going to return to his form, go right ahead, because he is a consistent horse, definitely one to consider underneath. However, to me, I just have not seen enough from this horse to be excited thinking he can beat any of the top choices in this race. Could be a low price because a lot of people do really like this horse. The 5 is Devamani, the last of our Chad Brown runners, and probably the most interesting, a former claimer, which you don't usually see from the Chad Brown barn. He was claimed last summer at Saratoga by Rob Atras, who's a very capable trainer in New York, a real up-and-coming type, probably a name not many are too familiar with. But after the end of the year, this horse made a run on the dirt, and then got switched to the barn of Chad Brown, where he finished second in back-to-back graded stakes by a nose and a neck. That was the Tampa Bay, obviously at Tampa Bay Downs, and the Fort Marcy behind stablemate Instilled Regard. 2 really good runs for this horse. He's a 6-year-old gelding, very impressive pedigree, formerly ran in France. Joel Rosario, who's been aboard for both of those runner-up efforts, he's back in the saddle for this race. So there's some really intriguing things about this horse. This is probably his toughest test, but he's raced against this level his last 2 races, and he's done it well. And a lot of his losses even before that, he was losing to some pretty good horses. Annals of Time, even last summer at Saratoga, was one of those losses. Some other stakes winners like Nakamura, a horse for Grand Motion, he lost to when he was claimed from that Saratoga race in August. So he has a lot of class. Maybe not one that will cross the line first, but he is a very consistent, hard-trying runner who you might consider underneath. The 6 Channel Maker, your other Grade 1 winner in the field, he took the Man Award at Belmont Park last May in 2019. That was his last career win to this point. He's dropped every single race since then, and there's been a lot. And he has missed the board in his last 5 races. Not 8 of his last 9, he's missed the board. The only time he did hit the board was when he was second in the Turf Classic at Belmont last fall. And those last 3 runs really have me concerned. 8th in the Tiller against much easier company last time out. 8th in the Muniz Memorial down at Fairgrounds before that. And a 4th in the Mac Diarmida. It never really seemed like he was going to get the job done. He's obviously lost a step from his Grade 1 form that we saw at Saratoga 2 years ago, and even in that Man Award last spring when he beat some talented horses in that race. There's just not a lot to like. Manny Franco does hop in the saddle for this run for trainer Belmont. I just don't have a strong feeling. He needs to improve leaps and bounds if he wants to be able to compete with this group. The 7 Dot Matrix, former New York bred stalwart before kind of branching out, and it was successful. He did win a Grade 3 at Sam Houston, the John B. Connolly Cup, in January of this year. That was 3 starts ago. Then he went out to the Fairgrounds, had a very awful start, just blew the break, never had a chance after that, and was well beaten in the Muniz Memorial. However, he came back to run a really strong second, coming from way off the pace and being just ahead in the Tiller, that listed stakes that a lot of these horses seem to be coming out of. But this horse has been impressive. This is going to be an interesting race because he hasn't really faced top-level horses going this distance. A mile and 16th, a mile and an eighth is where he's really, tested the tougher horses. Now he gets up to a mile and a quarter. Distance is not an issue for him. My question is, can he still pack that same punch against this group? One thing of note, when he did win that Grade 3 at Sam Houston, he did beat Bema's Boy by 3/4 of a length, and Bema's Boy came back to win a graded stakes at Gulfstream in his next start. So some solid back class, good closer. The class is the big question. Can he take that next step from that very solid run in the Tiller? You draw a line through that Muniz. He's coming off 2 really good races. If he can take that step, he might be there, but it's really a class test. Florent Geroux does come in to ride. And the 8 and the last horse in the field, Spooky Channel, the very surprise winner of the McKnight in January of this year. He won that by a neck over cross border. He was also in this race. He was a big long shot there. He dropped 2 more stakes at Gulfstream after that before winning an allowance, going on a mile in the 16th over a pretty solid field at Churchill in his last start. Distance isn't an issue. That wasn't an issue when he won the McKnight going a mile and a half. He's very capable the longer he goes. He's won one of the few mile and 7/8 stakes in the United States at Turf Paradise in May of 2019. That's a little known fact about this horse, but so distance not a problem. He's intriguing. If you really are trying to look outside of your favorites in this race, you got your 3 Chad Brown horses who easily are the class of the field. Then you have who people would probably consider some live outsiders like Cross Border and like Dot Matrix. This horse is right up there with him. 15-1 on the morning line. I think if you have that price, he's worth an underneath look at least. And I don't think this is a horse you can leave off of any of your multi-race wagers because he is pretty dangerous and his speed figures have been pretty impressive in his last few races. So let's take a quick look at the pace scenario. Like I said, the 3 Cross Border, he is going to be your controlling speed. No one's really going to go with him. No one's shown they would likely go with him. The 6 Channel Maker, he's a stalking type. He likes to sit second, third, or fourth. He'll probably be second in this race. And Spooky Channel, expect him to be a little bit closer. But it seems like the longer he's gone, the closer up he's been. So although he was 7th in a 12-horse race early on in his last race at Churchill, expect him to probably be 3rd or 4th in this race. And then riding behind them, you'll have Dot Matrix. Your Chad Brown trio is going to be scattered around in the back. No real idea. And then Sadler's Joy, always a late closer in that group. So for me in this race, I am always biased towards Instilled Regard because he's been my favorite horse, or one of my favorite horses since he was very young. But on paper, he seems like the easy pick in this race. He has all the things going for him. I like that Irad Ortiz is aboard, as I already said. Everything on paper says that he's the best horse in this race and the most consistent, and I'm really hopeful he can finally notch that first Grade 1 win in his career. To spice things up underneath, though, the 3 Cross Border, I love Lone Speed if I can find it, and that's exactly what he is, and he has the class to back it up, so I expect him to be there. And then if you're looking for a play for 3rd, go with either of the Chad Brown horses that aren't in Instilled Regard, Devamani or Rock Emperor, 2 very consistent horses, always near the board. They'll likely be running late. So that's all I have for you. Pretty wide open race. A lot of opportunity for 6 horses who don't have Grade 1 wins and 2 horses who are looking to regain their old Grade 1 winning form. But it is an exciting race. A lot of fun. Probably some of the better horses in the older male turf division. So that's all I have for you this time, and we'll see you next time on the Racing Rundown.
With Instilled Regard, who has made a move there. Flop Shot has now come on, and the field is at the top of the stretch. Temple had to check out of it. 3/4 went in 1:11.1. And here is Instilled Regard to take over the lead in the stretch. Some like it Hot Brown in second. Then it's Synchrony, Devamani gaining on the outside, but just the 16th to the finish. It is Instilled Regard with the lead. Devamani closing fast. Instilled Regard is the winner.